Hi, my name is Shawn Glidden and I am the owner and designer for Acme Knits, a company I started in 2001, and I have been knitting for approximately 50 years, and I've been wanting to podcast since last October. The name of my podcast is Knit56, so come along on this journey with me and I will show you projects that I have knit in the past, far past, and that I've learned something from, because I have lots of learning opportunities in my knitting. And I'll show you most recently finished projects that I love and wear, and I'll show you things I'm working on, which there's always way too many. I am not a monogamous knitter. I will knit many projects at one time. And I have a huge respect for knitting and what its importance in our history, how it's clothed us and entertained us, and knitters, I think, are just fabulous people. So I will be sharing some history out of books. I have a huge library that I would love to share. So at the end of the podcast, I'll be doing some reading. And if I get acquisitions, I'll throw those in. This is my first podcast, and I'm a little bit nervous, so we'll just see how the whole thing goes. I am in my loom room, let's say, hanging right here on the loom, which was given to me, by the way. I am such a fortunate woman. Is a project that I've been working on. This is my big hairy goal. It's crocheted pieces that I have knit together or sewn together to create a winter jacket. This is not finished, but each piece is becoming more and more finished. So there is a yoke that goes here, that goes all the way around, and this is the back, and it's attached to the yoke when I'm done with it. So I'm finishing all the pieces first, and then I'll sew them all together. Oh, it's so tall I can barely reach the bottom. So it goes from white at the top to dark at the bottom. This piece, you can see, this is where the pocket goes. It's got a pocket in it. So the body is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces, a back, the 2 sides, and 2 fronts. And this is one of the sides and front. So once again, the yoke here, this is where the sleeve is set in. And you can see there's a pocket opening. Pocket will be knit and lined. And there we go. And every once in a while I throw in a little splash of that green. Just here and there. It's mostly whites and off-white with grays. I really love working on this. However, it requires a lot of thinking because it's constant decision making. I have paper patterns cut out, and I place the circles on the paper pattern, and then I sew them together once I get them in a way that I think is attractive. So that's my biggest, latest project. Okay, what am I working on? A couple of different things. Brioche for this. It's one of the Knit56 yarns palette, I think, and I ordered a whole bunch, and I had never used it. And so this is going to be this really light. This side is going to be the light color, and I have a gray to go in after that. And this is a nice ecru and yellow. I'm trying to use up my stash. So that's kind of my late night knitting because it doesn't require too much thinking. I am knitting this beautiful lace pattern. You can kind of see it there. Oh, there we go. And what I'm planning on doing is knitting, I have a lot of white yarn, as you might be able to tell from my other project, and I will knit a white backing and sew them together. So this lace work will really stand out nicely, and it'll be drapey. It's going to be with a fingering or lace weight. I have some knitting machines. I do other work on knitting machines as well, and so I'll knit the white piece for this on the knitting machine. I took a class this spring with Lucy Neatby on double knitting and started this when I got home. So I try to get a little bit of this done every day. I don't always get to it, but it's really fun. So there's the one side, and here's the other side. It's just a little block pattern that I made up. I'm doing this on size 3s, I think, maybe 2s. And I'm using Harrisville Shetland. I have a bunch of these cones. I make hats out of these on my knitting machines and sell them. And so I have lots of little bits and pieces left. So not enough to really make a hat. So I'm going to be adding all these different colors into my double knit scarf. And this yarn, I really like it. It's a little bit coarse to work with, but when you wash it, it gets very soft and lovely. And it's a nice, I love this wool from Harrisville. Ta-da! I like it. It requires some thought. I'm not very good with color work. So this is also kind of teaching me what not to put together. Like that red and blue, it kind of hurts your eyes. It's a little bright. They kind of vibrate, and I don't really care for that so much. The green and orangish color are nice. The yellow and green works. And now what am I doing? Kind of a teal with an kiwi color, maybe green. That would be nice. So I have brioche, I have double knitting, and now I'll show you one of my big projects here. So this next shawl, it's a shawl I'm going to show you. I have 2 finished, and this is the 3rd, and they're in different weights of yarn because I wanted to see how it worked up. This is in merino, and I have a whole bunch of that. And so this is the pattern. It's once again, I don't know what I'm going to call this either. There's 3 pattern stitches in this shawl, each of them divisible by 4. So as you increase 4 stitches every other row. It's a diamond shaped, a triangle shaped shawl. And so the pattern is really easy to follow because you increase, you know, every other row 4 stitches. You just keep doing the same row and it alternates the pattern, shifts the pattern over. So I'm starting with the same stitch pattern that's on the top of Gary's sweater, and then it goes to this, which is the bottom of Gary's sweater, which I love, and this, and the 3rd. I haven't gotten to the final stitch on this yet, but so I'm just alternating between the 2 stitch patterns with 4 garter stitch rows in between. So this color is coming out pretty true. I really like this color. And this weight is it's more substantial than the other 2 that I have done. Now I'll show you the first one I did in Malabrigo lace, which is 100 grams, 470 yards, I think. So this is in 2 colors, so each time I switched the pattern, I also switched yarn, the color of yarn. And this lace it's a lace weight yarn, and it's so fine, and it blocked out. I didn't block this very heavily, I just got it wet and laid it out, but it's still, the stitch pattern just doesn't pop out. And there's the bottom one, which it's really fun 3x1 kind of rib stitch that alternates. So this is really lovely. I really like this. But the lace weight is totally different than this fingering weight, I would guess. I mean, the stitches just look totally different. It feels totally different. I actually like it in this one because it really shows the texture nicely. So this was the first one I knit with this, and I've shown pictures on Instagram. Maybe I'll show a picture of the whole thing here. I'll insert a picture. This is the third one I did, or the second one I did, and this is in Harrisville Designs silk and wool yarn. 175 yards per skein, 50 grams, 1.75 ounces, and it's 50% silk, 50% wool. It's very light. I enjoyed knitting with it a lot. I think I did this on a size 4. My first podcast, I don't have any notes. I'm just winging it, and I don't remember what size I knit all this stuff on. But when I write the pattern, I will, because I do have it written down somewhere. So here it is in silk and wool. This one's quite a bit bigger than the lace. I think this is like a worsted weight. So I can't see what you're seeing because I'm behind the shawl, but there it is. You can see the bottom kind of rib. So it's a triangular shaped shawl. That's so cool. This took, I believe, 4 skeins. Yeah. It's quite big. My arm span. I'm 5'6". And it's just bigger than my arm span. Quite deep. So if anyone wants to try out, if anyone wants to knit this shawl in any gauge, any weight wool, I'm happy to have you test my pattern for me. It's graphed and written. It's totally graphed and mostly written. I still have some work to do on it. I don't know what I'm going to call it yet. It's got these great, it's this subtle texture. It's really fun. Yeah, so I need a name. I've been thinking and I can't think of a name. Thinking and nothing happens. Yeah, that's me. That's my life. Thinking and nothing happens. Here's another pattern that I have written and actually is out to one tester. Also needs a name. Yeah. But this pattern I find to be pretty simple and lovely. It's an all-over lace with separated by garter stitch. And I had once again used the Malabrigo lace weight, and I'm pretty sure I knit this on a size 2 needle. It's garter stitch lace pattern. Both front and back are similar. About the biggest way to tell the difference between the two sides is the garter stitch rows, whether you can see where you change color. True sign of which side you think is right or wrong. Anyway. Yeah. So this is out to one test knitter right now. And once again, if you feel like you want to knit this, I would love to have some test knitters work this up for me. Another few more. It's garter stitch, size 2. This is a lace weight. It took 1 skein each of the light blue and the dark, or the gray and the blue. Oh, so pretty, isn't it? There's the end. So it's sort of a triangle, but not a perfect triangle. You start here on this end, increasing only on what becomes the top side. So you increase there. And you can't see it in this yarn because it's kind of fuzzy, but there's a nice little yarn over at the beginning that creates this nice partial loop. It's easier to see on this side maybe. So I create at the beginning of my shawl, it's a yarn over and a knit 2 together, and it just creates a nice flexible a little bit lacy edge. So once again, contact me if you want to do this shawl. So this would be the lacy shawl, and the other one is the textured shawl, if you're going to contact me or if you feel like commenting. Yeah, this took 940 yards of lace weight, and it's 52 inches across and about 26 inches deep. There it goes. Oh, showing you my knitting. Isn't that fun? This would be a good project for a, it might be a good beginning lace project, because it's all over lace. Like there's, it's an 8-stitch pattern that repeats, separated by garter stitch. You could do this in one color, anyway, or 2 or 3. My next project that I'm going to show you, yeah, see, lots of knitting, lots of projects. This isn't even everything I have on my needles. One more though, I'll show you. This is, I'm knitting this with the, and entering it in the Canada Cal. That's sponsored by Fairy Little of the Stitch and Twist and Stitch podcast. I'll add it here at the bottom. I've been watching her for a couple weeks, her podcast, and have this beautiful Rovings yarn that's a Silwolk blend. Where's the label? Here. Rovings from Canada. And it's each skein, gosh, I got 2 skeins in there, 600 meters, no, and 650 yards, or 150 grams, 5.5 ounces. It's a 2-ply fingering weight, 80% Polworth and 20% cultivated silk. So it's really beautiful. It has lots of shine. It's really drapey. It took me forever to figure out what to knit this into. I've had it for years, literally 10 years, I think. This has been in my stash. So thanks to the Cal, I was inspired to come up with something, right? So I'm knitting an infinity scarf. It's going to be wide, maybe. I'll use up all the yarn. That's how wide it's going to be. And then I'm doing these nice little traveling stitch pattern up this. So the pattern will go this way around the scarf. I'm knitting it the long way. I cast on 420 stitches or something like that. But I have to say, and so that pattern, the little cable pattern, is separated by these plain areas to give your brain a little rest. And this color is showing pretty true on my camera. I'm knitting these on size 2 highest sharps, which I really like. They're wooden needle, because this wool is slippery, and so, and I just have a little funky seed stitch pattern at the bottom. I'm not sure I like it. It's a little bit looser than the rest of the knitting. So it's on, oops, sorry. It's on a reverse stockinette. But it's gonna feel like you're wearing a cloud. I can imagine this doubled around your neck in the wintertime. And this beautiful gray will go with any color winter coat. Red, black, dark blue, green. Oh, can you imagine? I mean, it's just such a pretty gray. Sarah from Fiber Trek. I like gray too. See, this is the big skein. Look at that. It's huge. So the inspiration for that stitch came out of this book, which I love this book. Sometimes I just look at it, even when I'm not trying to come up with a pattern for anything. It's so great. It's in German, by Liesel van der, I guess. Bauerliches Stricken 2. I don't know how to pronounce German. I'm sorry, I know. But there's the back cover. Anybody that knows German. Look at those beautiful stitches. Here's how the patterns look. The stitch graphs, slightly different from what I'm used to, but there's a great key, and even though I don't speak German, I've been able to figure this out. And in the back, they have these socks. It's hilarious. It's great. And they, look at these. Look at these. Wouldn't it be wonderful to wear something like this up your leg? Oh my gosh. Someday, a future project in the works. So let me show you something else about a sock pattern they have in here. Oh yeah. So this is what the calf of your leg would look like. Look at that. Oh my gosh. All the work. But wouldn't it be just great to have a nice woolly pair of socks that go up to your knee, and you have this beautiful decoration on your leg. It looks so great with a skirt. Okay, so there's the increased part for your calf in there from the side. So great. Someday when I have nothing but time, I'll knit myself a long pair of stockings. So the graphs for those stockings, let me show you. Ta-da! Pages. It's all graphed out. Oh, yeah, it's really long. It's not even unfolded all the way. It's longer than my arm. Fun project for the future. And I like knitting with white. You know why? Because I like texture. I love textured stitches. Yeah, that's it. Okay, now, speaking of texture and not color, here comes some color. And this is going to lead into the history part of my podcast. Gosh, I hope this works out. I hope I can get it upgraded. I hope I can, or uploaded. This has been really fun. I've been so scared. Like I said, I've been putting this off since October. Just had to do it. Don't judge how I look. Don't judge what I have to say or my accent. Because I watch all these great podcasts and they show all this lovely stuff and there's such beautiful people knitting, and yeah, I just can't worry about it. I had no self-judging. Okay, here I go. My last project I'm going to show you. Oh wait. Yeah, I have a project that is something that I learned from. I knit this sweater 20 years ago and I still wear it, but it's a mistake. The whole thing is a big, huge mistake. So it's this lovely cabled pullover. Sleeves. I knit this, seriously, I must have been, or maybe it was 30 years ago. I think I was in my 20s. Oh, look at that, so pretty. Here's the collar. Oh yeah, nice big collar. But, you know, it's great to wear. It's so squishy warm. And let's see the pattern that goes up. So the reason this is a mistake is because this is supposed to be a form-fitting sweater. I got it in Spinnerin. Remember those packets that used to come out? They were called Spinnerin patterns. I don't remember where they're from. And they were little booklets. It was pre-Ravelry days. And yeah, this was supposed to be knit on a much smaller yarn. I didn't know anything about gauge, nothing about gauge. I saw this yarn, I saw the pattern, I thought I want to do that, so I did it. And now I have this huge sweater that I wear in the winter. I get to wear it, you know, walking the dog. Sometimes, yeah, it's a great pattern. It was really fun to knit, as I remember, but it's huge. But it's okay. It's just an oversized sweater. So that was when I learned about gauge, because it didn't look anything like the picture. It didn't fit me like the picture. It's crazy. Look at that collar. Look at that. Oh yeah. Nice collar. Just folds up. Nice and toasty warm. Don't need it today. Gosh, there was a couple yarns I was going to talk about. Let me talk about those. A little disorganized, sorry. A friend of mine is a spinner and he gave me this lovely wool. He took a spinning class and he gifted me this. I think I'm going to make a hat out of it. It's about, he thought it was maybe 280 yards. He did a fine job spinning that. And I'm so fortunate to be gifted this yarn. The other yarn is something I purchased at our local festival. that occurs in May. It's called Shepherd's Harvest, and it's great. Shepherds from all over come and vend, and there's finished projects, and there's wool in all states of complete, preparedness. And I bought this yarn from the shepherd, she lives in northern Minnesota, and the name of her farm is Chengwatana Farm. And she has black Welsh mountain sheep. They're so gorgeous. I took a picture of the sheep. It was great. In the barn they would have some sheep on one side, and then on the other side was the yarn and the shepherd in another stall. So you could walk through the animal barn and sheep product. It was great. So this is sport weight, 200 yards. Actually, it's black-faced Leicester mixed with the black Welsh mountain sheep. But it's her sheep, her yarn. I don't know if you'll see, it's this beautiful black color. And I think I'm gonna make some mittens out of this. I mean, it's a natural black. It's so beautiful. Oh, look. Last project. Bohus knitting. Bohus? I don't know how you say it, but I have this book. Poems of Color by Wendy Keel. Knitting in the Bohus Tradition and the Women Who Drove the Swedish Cottage Industry. Some of you undoubtedly have this book, and if you haven't read it, read it. It's very interesting. Well, if you like knitting history, it's very interesting. So the sweater samples in this book are knit with a yarn called Fairy Hair. There's a picture of the hat. This is the pattern that I knit a sweater out of. So I happen to have a lot of this really exquisite fiber. It's wool and Angora. And I knit this sweater for my wife, Ellen. I knit this sweater, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. So the story behind this, however, is that I had lots of different ends. I had lots of yarn. I didn't buy it specifically for this sweater. Look at how those nice pearl stitches are showing in this light. And the ring of orange looks like jewels around her neck. It's so great. But, so the thing that's fun about this is one sleeve is this color. Because I was using ends. Right? So one sleeve is that color, and the other sleeve is this color. I had been making scarves out of this wool, and so I just had this left. And I just had enough yardage to knit Ellen a sweater. So, and you can kind of see I changed different maroons. There's the ribbing at the bottom. Whoop, sorry, some pilling there. Like I said, it's well loved, well worn. It's very lightweight and very warm. She really only wears it when it's very cold. Look at that. Oh. Isn't that just... Knitting is so great. It's so fun to look at. And this is really soft knitting. Soft, soft, soft. So what I thought I would do... Thank you for joining me, everyone, if you just came to see some knitting and some wool, and introduce yourself to me. I will, and to each other, I will hopefully get a, what do you call it, a page in Ravelry called Knit56. That's the name of my podcast, Knit56. And so I'll start a Ravelry page. I'll open an introductions thread, and we'll take it from there. I don't know if anyone's going to watch this. It's kind of embarrassing talking about my love of knitting. Anyway, I hope you're enjoying it. So thank you for joining me. But now I'm going to read some from this book. I'm going to just talk a little bit about the women involved in this. So this will be my little history section, because I love history of knitting. It's such a great art, craft, necessity. Knitting is awesome, and the people that knit are awesome. So I'm going to read a little bit from this book. This is published by Interweave Press, printed in Hong Kong. This came out, when did this come out? 1995, and I think I got it right away. So this book is pretty old already. 95, 05, this book is 21 years old. Goodness gracious. It's worth having. Poems of Color, Knitting in the Bohus Tradition by Wendy Keel. So stick around if you want to hear me read some about this knitting tradition, or come and introduce yourself. Tune in next time. I don't know. I'll try to do this once a week, maybe. I'm kind of embarrassed. Okay, so anyway, here we go. Preface. Wendy wrote this, Wendy Keel. I am often asked how I became interested in bohus stickning. Am I of Swedish descent, or do I speak the language? Unfortunately, the answer is no, on both counts. The saga started in September of 1986 when my mother and I traveled from Nebraska to Minnesota to attend a Knitters Weekend called Knitters Days. At that time, I was, quote unquote, at home with our two sons, ages 2 years and 3 months, and spent my afternoons dreamily thinking of knitting and designing. So a weekend of knitting sounded both relaxing and exciting. It was at Knitters Days that I first saw a bohus stickning sweater. It was moth-eaten, neglected example of Annalisa Mannheimer Lund's The Red Edge. But even in its deplorable condition, the sweater was so different from any design I'd ever seen that I was intrigued. That began my 9-year quest to learn more about bohus stickning and to write this book. It has included countless hours of researching, writing, knitting, and 3 trips to Sweden. There have been times of great frustration, but even more times of overwhelming joy. The opportunity to write this book has been a wonderful blessing. So the book is great. It talks about the women who ran it, the women who knit, the women who designed. It talks about the garments, the quality of the wool. There's patterns in this book. There's resources. So let's see, I was going to read about Emma Stasny. She was born in Austria in 1883 in Vienna. And she had a PhD in botany. She was a scientist. And she met and married Malte Jacobson, a Swedish student who was studying philosophy in Vienna. And they ended up moving back to Sweden. It was hard for her to move to Sweden. She had to give up her work as a PhD and become a wife. And then, to top it off, her husband becomes governor of Bohuslän. And so she had to stop everything and become a governor's wife. Big job. When was that? 1934. In 1937, a group of women came to her as the governor's wife and said, we need some help. We want to maybe start a cottage industry. We need something to do. There was a Great Depression then. People were hungry. People needed work. So they started a crafting business. At first it was socks and gifts and little things. And it gradually grew into the sweater knitting business. In 1939, it officially began, this organization. Here's one of the designers in a room full of sweaters. So women designed this. They did a lot of research on wool. Here you can see there's a lot of history in this book. It's so great. There's Emma and one of her designers looking through wool. They were very picky about the wool they chose. It had to be of the finest quality. Here's a display. So they wholesaled their sweaters. They were really high-end sweaters. And these were at, this is a large department store in Stockholm where the cruise ships would come in and they would sell sweaters. It was awesome. So the company went from 1939 until 69, 30 years only, and employed many women who worked at home, but then they also, here's a picture of another designer working. So great. They earned some income knitting and designing. Oh, look at this. Talk about white and black and gray. Oh my gosh. Another thing I want to knit. There's so much knitting to do in so little time. I highly recommend this book. Here's some pictures of the knitters. Another big dream of mine is to research something and have to travel to Europe to study. Study knitting, write a book. I don't know, writing's not my forte, but here's another picture of the women knitting. They were stay-at-home, they were mothers, homemakers, and earning some income by knitting. Let's see. So Emma Jacobson died in 1977. She was 93 years old. She worked when the company closed in 1969. She was 84. I think I read that somewhere. Is that right? At the age of 84, she was contemplating retirement. 84, contemplating retirement. This was a woman who had some drive and stamina. And the story in this book about her and her demand for excellence and her organizational skills, it's amazing. It's really inspirational. She was an inspirational woman. So they have mittens and hats and patterns. And they have lots of great how-to pictures. It's interesting too because they talk about the way the boho sweaters were traditionally done and then how you might do it today. So there's a couple options, like the buttonholes. They had a way of doing a buttonhole, and then in the book there's another way that might be better, or you might prefer. But there's great pictures, increases, decreases, yarn overs, 3-needle bind off, how they increase, how they do the seams. Patterns are really well written, I have found. So I'm just going to read the last paragraph of the history part. Last 3. This will be my final. I'm done. I've talked for a long time. It's kind of interesting to me that I could do that. In the fall of 1994, 5 women who were members of the Work Center in Uddevalla met at the Bohuslen Museum to reminisce about their involvement with boho sticking. They were Stina Josephson, age 75, Ingrid Anderson, 66, Ingegard Edvardsen, 76, Daga Torrensen, 69, Ingegard Larsen, 78. All 5 of these women came to knit for boho sticking by answering newspaper ads placed by their work center representative. With the exception of Ingrid, all worked for boho sticking for 5 to 7 years, from the late 1940s to the mid-1950s. Ingrid knit for 3 years in the early 60s. When these women worked for boho sticking, they were young mothers in their late 20s and early 30s. They recalled getting up early or staying up late to knit the intricate patterns while their children slept. Some put their children to bed early so that they could meet deadlines. Because all these women had family obligations, none were able to attend a vacation provided by boho sticking. None of these women was ever able to visit the boho sticking headquarters in Gothenburg or meet Emma Jacobson. For them, travel expenses were just too high. Years later, these knitters maintained fond appreciation for the beauty of boho sticking designs and yarns. Though most of the knitters were forced to end their association with boho sticking when the birth of an additional child left them with no extra time for knitting, they all agreed that if the opportunity existed today, they would knit again for boho sticking. Maybe I have such a warm affection for this book because I have done production knitting by hand and on machine, and it's fun, it's exciting, and it's boring, and it's tedious. It's all of those things all wrapped in one, but it's having your hands on fiber, which is a lovely thing. So for now, thank you for joining me, if you lasted through this mess of a first podcast, and I hope to see you again. Please introduce yourselves. I'd love to know if anyone watches this, and we'll see what the future holds. Thank you. Bye-bye.